Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 67th ever Highlight Haven interview. My name is Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by Boston Globe NFL journalist Ben Volin. Ben, it's great to have you on.
Matthew, what's up, man? Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, of course, I really appreciate you coming on and taking time out of your day to join me. And I want to talk about your journey before we start with any Patriots discussions. In 2008, you started covering the Florida Gators for the Palm Beach Post prior to becoming a Miami Dolphins beat reporter from 2010 to 2013. After that, you joined the Boston Globe, where you currently work as an NFL and New England Patriots journalist. I just want to start by asking when you first knew that you wanted to work in the sports industry, and how would you describe the journey you've taken to get to where you are today?
Yeah, thanks so much for the questions. I think, like a lot of kids in the 90s, I grew up watching Sports Center, Chris
Mhm.
Berman and Kenny Mayne. And sports were really becoming big business in the 90s, but it was still kind of pre internet. So, you're still kind of reliant on reading the sports section and listening to, local talk radio was just
Mhm.
becoming a thing. Um, so I always loved sports. I grew up reading the Washington Post, Tony Kornheiser and Michael Wilbon and Thomas
Yeah.
Boswell and all kinds of great sports writers. And Tony Kornheiser especially was always, kind of a hero, a guy, did sports writing, did radio. Like I've always thought that was a really neat way to make a living. So like I kind of sought it out. Like I did this school newspaper in high school. I did it when I got to college at Emory. I don't know how like realistic I thought it was,
Mhm.
but I just kept doing it. And then lo and behold, one day I wake up and I'm in the industry and I'm doing it. So, like doing the school paper in college, I thought was so important. That helped me land internships at real newspapers during the summer. Was able to use that experience to get a full-time job. Um, was lucky and fortunate that I was able to move and be willing to move anywhere. And
Mhm.
West Palm Beach, Florida, I applied to 100 places, across the country, and West Palm Beach called me up and said, we've got an entry level job for you.
Yeah.
So I said, great, I'll be there. And there was a lot of rejection, but,
Mhm.
before that, but, it all ended up working out, and I got to be there for 8 years and kind of climb the ranks, start off covering prep sports, but then cover the Florida Gators and the Miami Dolphins, as you said. Now it's been 12 years at the Globe, which it's just been an incredible run. I tell people I'm like the feather in Forrest Gump. I don't know if this reference is too old for you, but I'm like the feather that just like floated along.
Mhm.
And the fact that I landed at like a good, stable company in the Globe and in a real passionate market, as Boston, and get to cover the NFL. I mean, I really do feel like kind of the luckiest boy on the planet a lot of times. And so, um, very fortunate to have this job still where I get to go to the Super Bowl and go to the NFL draft in Green Bay a few weeks ago. And if you had told teenager me that this is what, I got to do, like I said,
Yeah.
I feel pretty lucky and pretty psyched about it. So just very, very grateful and, just very blessed to be in this spot now.
Now, you're also one of the 50 voters selected by the Associated Press to vote for MVP and other NFL awards. Can you just break down what is it like to have that responsibility, and what does the process look like when you're making those decisions?
Yeah, good questions. I've been doing it for 3 years now, and it's interesting. It's a lot of power, which sometimes there's sometimes where I'm like, maybe it's not so worth it, just because you get a lot of grief from people, and you can't.
Mhm.
There's no way you can make everyone happy, and it's not my job to make everyone happy. It's my job to pick who I think are the not only are we picking like MVP and Defensive Player of the Year and those awards, but also the All Pro teams. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
politicking, and like I have friends who are agents and things like that, and they want you to vote for their guy, and it's a lot. I don't, a journalist shouldn't necessarily have the power to control, because like these are important for guys that they can make a lot of money based off of if they make All Pro or if they win MVP, and so it is kind of a weird feeling as a
Mhm.
journalist, like being in the middle of the story, but so we'll see. As you can tell, I'm like a little bit on the fence about it,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
it is a tremendous honor, and I take it very seriously. Um, the thing that struck me is that the Associated Press, who runs it, they offer very little guidance. They leave it very like wide open for you to interpret awards how you see fit. I My interpretation for what an MVP is probably very different from what other people think
Mhm.
an MVP should be. And same with Defensive Player of the Year. And like they don't provide us stats, they don't provide us really any guidance.
Mhm.
Just your ballots are due on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Good luck and let us know if you have any questions. So, it leads to some controversial picks. Like this year, I missed the memo on Patrick Surtain. He got 49
Mhm.
first team All Pro votes. I voted him second team. I was the one
Mhm.
guy. I didn't know. I
Yeah.
mean, he had a very, very good season. He's an excellent
Mhm.
player. But like I wrote a whole column kind of explaining my rationale for all my
Mhm.
picks. Like I tend to, I weigh impact plays heavily. I
Mhm.
need like analytics are great and coverage stats are great, but ultimately for these awards to separate guys, I need impact plays. I need interceptions, touchdowns, forced fumbles, so on and so forth. And Sertan's resume was a little light in that regards, and that's not always his
Mhm.
fault. He's like one of the best corners in the game, and maybe teams shy away from him. But like, I go back to like Deion Sanders. They always said that about him. He would shut down half the field. Well, it's not like he was winning Defensive Player of the Year. He only won Defensive Player of the Year once when he had the stats, when he had led the league in picks and he had 3 pick sixes. Like to me, I need impact plays. So,
Mhm.
but that's what makes the awards great. Everyone's got their own different criteria and how they weigh things. And um, I feel good about how I picked, and I try to be as transparent as
Mhm.
possible. I think it's ridiculous to go through this process and try to not be able to stand behind your vote. So I always print all everyone, my entire ballots and everything, and I write a column explaining it. And so it's fun, but like I said at the top, it is a strange responsibility that as a journalist, I'm not fully sure about.
Yeah, 100%. And getting into the Patriots with the fourth overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft, New England selected LSU left tackle Will Campbell. What will Campbell's immediate impact look like as a rookie this upcoming season? And I might sound like a broken record because I'm sure you've heard this a lot, but is his short arm length something to really worry about?
I'd say it's something to monitor. I mean, I was up in Green Bay last week, and I'm no scout. I'm just a football writer.
Mhm.
Um, but I saw Will Campbell for the first time, and you look at him, you're like, yeah, his arms are a little short.
Mhm.
Now, you talk to people like who work with him and who have played the position. You can make up for short arms with great footwork and great body positioning and great athleticism. So it's not the be all end all, but history does say that guys with arms his length typically move inside to guard. So like we'll see.
Mhm.
I'd say initially they're going to start him at left tackle and see how he can handle himself. It's the only position he's played. He came from LSU where he won the starting left tackle job in August of his true freshman season and started 38 consecutive games at left tackle,
Mhm.
never missing a game, maybe never even missed a practice. So like very durable against the best competition in the SEC. It's not like, he's playing against slouches there. So he has been there and done it and proven he can handle the position at that level. Now that he's playing against the best of the best, we'll see. But you don't take a kid number 4 overall with plans of putting him at guard. So I think they draft him with the idea that he's going to be
Mhm.
our left tackle. But if it's not working out, we know we can still move him inside, and he's going to be a really solid player for us. He's got great character.
Yeah.
He's an excellent player, and I think if they
Mhm.
did move him inside to guard, Will Campbell will still have a 10-year NFL career. So I think they got a solid player, but there is some risk in using the number 4 pick on a guy who I don't think is a sure thing lock to be a left tackle.
Now, in the second round, New England selected Ohio State running back Travion Henderson. In Dane Brugler's annual NFL draft guide, when describing Henderson, he said his bursts of speed make him a home run threat, and coaches can trust him to execute without the football. His versatile skill set will be an immediate upgrade to an NFL backfield. That said, what can we expect the distribution to look like between Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson this season? And how long does it take until Henderson solidifies himself as the clear RB1?
I don't know that he ever will, to be honest. I think Travion Henderson maybe was brought in, at least initially, to be more of a passing game threat.
Mhm,
And Ramondre Stevenson can handle that as well. But the Patriots have always had a pass catching running back in their arsenal, especially when Josh McDaniels is running the offense.
mhm,
And they don't really have that. Well, they have Antonio Gibson, but I think Gibson could be in trouble with Travion Henderson being picked in the second round. And Ramondre Stevenson, I mean, he's now entering, I believe, his fifth or sixth year with the team. So he's, the running back lifespan. It's not like Ramondre Stevenson's really in the long-term plans either. So I think this year, you know, Travion Henderson won't be just given the job as the third down back, because that's a lot of responsibility with pass protection and protecting the quarterback. But I think that's the role they envision for him, and they want him to win that job. So how quickly he can, he can learn all of his assignments and the playbook and that kind of thing, I think will determine how many snaps that Travion Henderson's going to get. But they need the home run speed. They just need athletes on offense. That's why
mhm,
I was kind of into the idea of them taking Ashton Genty at number 4, just because I think they need playmakers.
mhm,
The Patriots, the last 2 years, are 31st in the league in offensive touchdowns scored,
mhm,
better only than the Giants. So they just, talent has been their big issue on offense, guys who are game breakers. And so I think they found one in Travion Henderson, and that's a good start for them. And we'll see about Kyle Williams, the receiver, in the third round as well.
mhm.
But you read about both guys that they bring speed, and that is, one thing that's been sorely missing from the Patriots offense. So you don't draft a running back in the second round to sit him. So Travion Henderson definitely will be getting the ball. But I think they view him more as a passing game piece and are excited about what he can do in that realm for Drake May, especially.
Mhm. And I think when it comes to Henderson, at least compared to Stevenson, he's much more of a speedy one cut back, ran a 4.43-second 40-yard dash at the combine. And then you touched on this, he excelled as a pass catcher in college, over 850 career receiving yards during his time at Ohio State. So we'll have to see if that's where they try and utilize him more this upcoming season. And you mentioned this name, Kyle Williams from Washington State, the wide receiver who the Patriots selected in the third round. Williams is also extremely fast, ran a 4.4-second 40-yard dash. Um, a really, really big deep ball threat who could make big plays for New England. Williams could eventually emerge as one of Drake May's top targets, but what do you anticipate his usage looking like this year behind both Demario Douglas and Stephon Diggs in that wide receiver core?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyle Williams is a little bit in a different spot from both those guys. Stephon Diggs um, is obviously one of their outside receivers, though he plays the
Mhm,
slot too. But Diggs, let's see if he's available for the first 6 games of the
mhm,
season, coming off that torn ACL. I wouldn't be shocked if he starts on PUP. We'll see, but I know he's trying to be there for week 1, but
mhm,
maybe the Patriots might want to take it slowly with him. As I mean, Douglas is almost strictly a slot, and I would expect Kyle Williams to be more on the outside. Um, Look, I think with the Patriots wide receivers, they should always come with a caveat, because this organization has really struggled to develop wide receivers over the years. For every Julian Edelman, there's 5 Aaron Dobsons and N'Keal Harrys, and
mhm,
it goes Josh Boyce. The list goes on and on. So this is a franchise that has struggled to develop wide receivers. That said, what sticks out to me with Kyle Williams was there was analysis by Steve Smith, the former Panthers and Ravens receiver. I think it was on NFL Network, where he was talking about maybe his 3 favorite receivers in the draft, and he singled out Kyle Williams. He said he loved his game. He loved, even though he's a little guy, he's got some real toughness in him. Obviously, I'm sure reminds Steve Smith of himself. Said
mhm,
he's a really polished route runner for a young guy. So I don't know if he's got Steve Smith's seal of approval. Sounds good enough to me. What do I know? But
mhm,
I thought that's interesting that Steve Smith kind of singled this kid
mhm.
out
Yeah.
before the draft, before we knew he was going to go to the Patriots, as someone that he really liked. So, the Patriots, like, they keep whiffing on receivers. Last year, Javon Baker, fourth rounder,
Mhm,
had a tough time picking up the playbook and knowing where to line up. Jalen Polk, just a disaster second round pick. So you never know with these guys. But Kyle Williams, the fact that Steve Smith likes him, frankly, that makes me feel better about the pick than what happened with last year's guys.
Now you mentioned Polk, and I want to touch on that a little bit. Um, In college, Kyle Williams posted a success rate of over 58% on throws 20 plus yards downfield, consistently yielded explosive plays. That's what we heard was going to happen with Polk last season. That's what people were saying after he was drafted, that he is a big play guy. Do you think New England partially drafted Williams to be their Jalen Polk replacement and kind of leave him in the past after Polk had a rookie campaign where he had just 12 receptions and 87 receiving yards?
I think Polk will get the benefit of the doubt during training camp just because he was a second round pick.
Mhm.
That said, if he's clearly lagging in the competition, they won't hesitate to cut him. But I
Yeah.
do think, all things being equal, you probably give him one more chance. Maybe best case scenario, you just hope that last year, tough rookie year, struggled with confidence, but now with better coaching, better surroundings, that Jalen Polk will snap out of it and figure out his way in the NFL. It's probably optimistic. I think he was way overdrafted. Even though he was the 37th pick, I think he was the 10th receiver off the board.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there were big expectations on him that probably weren't fair. And then I think his last lack of success kind of snowballed, and it bred even less confidence for him. So I think he'll have the benefit of the doubt probably over Kayshon Boutte, who I would give him another chance. I actually liked what he was showing last year. There have been, he fell to the sixth round maybe because of off-field issues or whatever. So I don't know what's going on with him there, but he actually made some plays last year, and I don't think that's anything to sneeze at because the Patriots didn't have a whole lot on offense. So I personally would give Booty one more chance this year, but maybe Polk, just because he's the second round pick, probably has the benefit of the doubt. But they are clearly remaking that room. Demario
Mhm.
Douglas is probably safe, but it's going to be Stephon Diggs, it's going to be Mac Hollins, and then it's going to be Kyle Williams. So that's four right there, and then maybe they keep one more guy, or there's no guarantee that they do. They could always, still acquire someone during training camp, someone who's released, someone who plays more special teams. So wide receiver, they addressed it some. Stephon Diggs, we'll see how he does coming off that knee. Kyle Williams, third round pick. Um, in a best case scenario, they found some good speed on the outside, but with the Patriots, I think you always have to take a wait and see approach at receiver, because that's just been one position that has really confounded them over the years.
Now, the Patriots' other third round pick was Georgia center Jared Wilson, who is pretty athletic for a center, possesses good speed and quickness. How likely is it that Wilson immediately steps in as the Patriots' starting center in 2025 ahead of Garrett Bradbury?
Yeah, Wilson was an interesting pick. Clearly, the Patriots were looking to double up on offensive line,
Mhm.
and they were strongly considering Savainea, the kid from Arizona, who's like a guard tackle. They were debating him or Travion Henderson at number 38, and then the Dolphins traded up to number 7 and took Savainea
Mhm.
right ahead of the Patriots, so it kind of made the Patriots' decision for them. And so, the Patriots then looking to double up, they wait till the third round, they get Jared Wilson, and he's an athletic freak. He was one of the best athletes at the combine, but he only started 1 year in college. He only
Mhm.
played his final, he was a 4-year player at Georgia, but he only started his last year. He was a starting center for Georgia. So to me, he's a little bit of a project. So to project him as like an immediate starter on the offensive line, that I wouldn't go there for him. I would think he's going to be a little bit more of someone they see the traits in him and they hope that he can develop. That said, they've got Cole Strange and they signed Garrett Bradbury right now. So to me, those are kind of your center and your left guard. If Jared Wilson proves that he belongs at this level, one of those guys becomes expendable.
Mhm.
Wouldn't be surprised if it's Cole Strange, final year of his rookie deal. He's only due, I think, $2.5 million. If he signs somewhere else, the Patriots can recoup some of that. So less of a headache to move on from Cole Strange and Garrett Bradbury. But even I don't think Bradbury is guaranteed anything either. I think he'll have to make the team, and the fact that the Vikings moved on from him shows that he's no lock either. So Wilson, I think they view him as more of a long-term developmental project. But if he comes on and has a great camp, the opportunity is there for him to
Mhm.
replace one of those two veterans on the line.
Now, kind of making our way down the draft in the fourth round, the Patriots selected Cal safety Craig Woodson. However, it doesn't necessarily feel like safety was New England's biggest need at this point in the draft. Despite that, what are your expectations for Woodson at the NFL level? And does it concern you that he spent 6 seasons in college and is already 24 years old?
No, the age thing doesn't bother me. He's still relatively young, and like if he were a running back and he did 6 years of running back in college, that would concern me. But
Yeah.
uh, that doesn't necessarily bother me. What's funny is Woodson is kind of viewed as the one pick that the Patriots kind of reached on. If you look
Mhm.
at
Yeah.
a lot of the mock drafts, they didn't have him going that high, but whatever. I mean, we'll see how he does now. If they have I'm sure they have a vision for him as a special teams guy to start, and
Mhm.
he'll be a backup safety. And I would disagree. I think safety is a need for them. Jabril Peppers is probably not long for this team, considering every other captain from last year has now been released or let leave. I don't think Peppers should feel too comfortable here. He's
Yeah.
also either approaching 30 or on the other side of 30. And then Kyle Duggar is an older player as well. And I think this is the last year of his guaranteed money on his new contract. So I could see after this year some big changes coming to that position, and that's probably where Woodson slides in. So he'll start on special teams. And if he develops, I definitely think the Patriots are looking for longer term answers at safety.
Now, there's no doubt that New England has two very solid cornerbacks with Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis. However, when you look past those two guys, there is a massive drop off in terms of production and overall skill level. How concerning is the Patriots' cornerback depth in your mind? And is that something you would like to see them address before the start of the season?
I mean, yes, in the
Mhm.
in terms of I think they're going to be scouring the waiver wire
Mhm.
and constantly kind of shuffling out the fourth and fifth and sixth bodies. But I'm not overly concerned with the depth. I like Marcus Jones a lot as your number
Mhm.
third corner. I thought he was really good last year when healthy, and that's his issue is being able to stay in the lineup every week. But for a guy who's 5'8" and whatever, like a buck 75, he
Mhm.
brings the wood. He lays some real heavy hits. He's got tremendous athleticism, really kind of a dynamo back there in the secondary. So I like Marcus Jones as the third corner. And then after that, your backup corners are always going to be special teams guys, and you're never going to have like four starting caliber corners. But to have Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis, that's a really good start on the outside. You could play press man on both sides, really free you up to be creative with your rush schemes and your blitz schemes. So I feel okay about where the Patriots are at cornerback, and this is the last year where Christian Gonzalez is going to be cheap. This is his third season, so
Yeah.
they're probably gearing up to sign him to a big extension next year. I'm sure he is going to be angling for it and
Mhm.
probably won't play without it. So um,
Just broke
they need,
down.
yeah, they need to enjoy their one last year with Christian Gonzalez on a cheap contract this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we broke down the Patriots' top 5 draft picks. However, there are still many players that we didn't talk about. Who is one late round pick for New England that you're really high on this upcoming season?
Well, it's not as much me as it is. So I've this website that I've come onto this season, grinding the mocks. I think they do a pretty
Mhm.
good job. It's one guy, he just follows like hundreds, maybe even a few thousand mock drafts and player rankings, and just like combines them all to come up with like composite rankings of not necessarily here's when you combine all these hundreds of mock drafts together, here's generally where this player should be
Mhm.
picked. And the Patriots did a pretty good job of drafting guys where they're projected to go. But
Yep.
one guy they got really high was the fifth round pass rusher from LSU. Swinton might be his last name. Braden Swinton might be his name. So again, I'm not a draft nick. I don't go super deep on the draft. I'd never heard of Braden Swinton before the draft, but I know that um, for an edge rusher, I think the Patriots got really good value there in the fifth round, and that's what they need. They need bodies right now. They're changing their scheme under Mike Vrabel. They're going after the guys who are maybe the more one-trick ponies who just pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. They signed Clavon Chason, the former first-round pick from the Jaguars, who hasn't really panned out, but is a guy who can speed around the edge. And Harold Landry is kind of someone like that as well. So, um, the Swinton in the 5th round might be a nice pick. And then we'll see about the kicker, Borregales. The Patriots' last 2 kickers that they've drafted haven't worked out too well. Chad Ryland and Justin Rohrwasser. Of the last 13 kickers that have been drafted, 3 of them have gone to the Patriots. So um, what's interesting is the last few years in the NFL, league-wide, the drafted kickers have generally struggled, while the undrafted guys are all the best players. The last year, the top 7 scorers, including the 2 All-Pro guys, were all undrafted. So maybe there's something about the pressure of being a drafted kicker that gets to these guys. But yeah, that was one of my big takeaways is, they traded Joe Milton, and I know they weren't going to get a ton for Joe Milton, but the return on him was they got a kicker, a long snapper, and Mr. Irrelevant, a defensive back with the final pick of the draft. So I'm just like, I'm blown away that that's all they got for someone who has insane physical talents like Joe Milton. So he's going to be with the Cowboys now, and with Dak Prescott's injury history, maybe Joe Milton gets on the field. But I think the Patriots are really going to regret just giving up Joe Milton for a ham sandwich. And a kicker and a long snapper and Mr. Irrelevant, that is a weak return for that kind of player.
Now, I discussed this in a different interview, but Milton, obviously really good raw athleticism, played good in the final week of the season. I know that was against the Bills, third stringers, but still showed a lot of potential for, as you mentioned, what the Patriots did end up getting in return for him. Now, most of the major free agents have already received new contracts. That said, are there any specific players or general position groups that you would still like to see New England target?
At this point, like, not to use the old cliche, but like the hay's in the barn, free agency's over with. The draft is done. Maybe they could trade. Maybe they could do one more impact trade for a wide receiver, like go get Tyreek Hill or George Pickens. But I think they're probably pretty set at this point. What's interesting is none of those veterans got traded during the draft. Trey Hendrickson, Kirk Cousins, Jalen Ramsey, like none of the veterans really got traded other than Sam Howell got moved. But so, maybe there's a trade, to be made there. But, if they were going to do it, I would think before the draft. Like I was hoping they would go trade for Colton Miller from the Raiders and plug left tackle that way. And then you can go use number 4 on an Ashton Genty or someone else. But, they've made their bed now with Will Campbell. So I not that Colton Miller maybe was even available. I don't know if the Raiders had any interest in trading him, but the Patriots aren't going to do that now. So I think at this point in the offseason, you're just scouring the waiver wire to see who's released post-draft, who's going to be released in training camp. There's going to be a lot of change. Mike Vrabel has made clear that there's going to be a lot of turnover and that it's going to be a very new roster this year. But I don't think any impact moves are going to be made. I think at this point, the Patriots have their 22 starters, and you're really just looking for depth.
Now, I do have one final question to ask before we wrap things up. If there was one piece of advice you could give to an aspiring sports broadcaster and journalist like me, what would it be?
Great question. I would say do it. Don't just, like going to school is good, but like doing journalism, being active in your high school and in your university, whether that's newspaper, a magazine, TV, the resources in your community, local TV, local publications, working for websites, starting your own website. Like the best way to become a good writer is to practice writing. And the best way to become a good broadcaster is to just practice broadcasting. And when you're young, there are a lot of good resources at your disposal. So read a lot, consume a lot. That'll help you kind of formulate what in your mind is works and what's good and what's bad. And then just try to do it as much as you can. And no opportunity is too small, and everything can help you, even if you can't see the benefit in it right away. So it's difficult. It's a hard industry to break into. It took me, like maybe a year and a half after graduating college to finally get a full-time, job at a newspaper with benefits and everything. So it's difficult, but just constantly, look for opportunities and just try to do as much journalism as you can, because that's the only way you're going to get better, and that's the only way you're going to get noticed.
Yeah, I really appreciate that advice, and I can't thank you enough for coming on. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching before we wrap things up, including where can they find your work?
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. And you can follow me on X at Ben Volin, or please come read our website and support the Boston Globe. We're at bostonglobe.com.
Again, big thanks to Ben Volin for being the 67th ever Highlight Haven interview guest, and as always, we will see you next time.